You know that feeling, right? When you've really gone out of your way for someone, maybe again and again, and it just starts to feel, well, expected.
Hmm.
Or even worse, like completely taken for granted.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that.
So if you've ever wondered if maybe there's a downside to always being the nice one, then this deep dive is probably for you.
Definitely.
Because today we're looking at a perspective that really flips the script on what we usually think it means to be truly kind.
Exactly. And we're not just talking about, surface level politeness here. We're digging into the ideas of Carl Jung, the psychologist.
Right.
Our exploration today is based on this really quite fascinating YouTube video transcript that unpacks his surprising views on genuine kindness. It's often not what we've been taught to believe.
Okay, so our mission then is to get past those standard ideas of just selflessness and uncover maybe a deeper, more solid kind of kindness.
That's the goal, something more resilient.
One that doesn't leave you feeling totally drained or resentful, but actually makes you stronger, maybe more whole.
A kindness that comes from strength, not depletion.
So if you're curious about this kind of counterintuitive take on being a good person, stick with us. Okay, let's dive in. What's the actual problem, according to Jung, with trying to be too good?
Well, it's really interesting. What's highlighted in our source is Jung's observation that the people who strongly identify as, exceptionally good, they often seem to be the ones dealing with the most personal suffering.
Hmm.
The transcript talks about this pattern Jung noticed, where this intense focus on outward goodness seems to correlate with some pretty significant inner turmoil.
That feels really backwards, though, doesn't it? You'd think being kind would lead to, well, good things happening to you. Where's the disconnect there?
Yeah, you would think so. The video transcript really gets into the societal ideal of goodness, and that seems to be where the issue starts. We often carry this image, maybe unconsciously, of the person who always says yes, never complains, constantly forgives, always puts everyone else first.
Right, the sort of perfect, selfless ideal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Jung argued that this isn't just unrealistic, it can actually be quite harmful to our own well-being.
Harmful. How so?
The source material really stresses that when we start equating kindness with completely ignoring our own needs, when loving others means just erasing our own boundaries,
Yeah.
well, we essentially become the architects of our own unhappiness. We're constantly giving away bits of ourselves, and, eventually, there's just not much left for us.
That makes sense.
The core idea here is that kindness at your own expense isn't sustainable. And according to Jung, it's not even really true kindness.
Okay, that's a really powerful way to frame it. It sounds like we're getting into some of Jung's big ideas now. Let's talk about the shadow self. What exactly is that, and how does it connect to this whole kindness discussion?
The shadow is, it's a cornerstone of Jungian thought. It basically refers to all those parts of our personality that we tend to reject or push away.
Like what kinds of things?
Think about feelings like anger, maybe envy, our own selfish desires, acknowledging our limits. The transcript uses this great analogy. Imagine trying to hold a beach ball underwater.
Okay.
The harder you push it down, the more force it has when it inevitably pops back up.
Right. So how does this pressure to always be good force these, perfectly normal parts of us into that hidden underwater place?
Well, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
Society often tells us, directly or indirectly, that certain feelings or needs are just not okay if you want to be seen as a good person.
Mm-hmm.
We learn to suppress anger, maybe put others first even when it hurts us, ignore our own limits, because we feel we should be able to handle everything.
And we push down.
We push it down. This constant external pressure forces these very natural human things into our shadow. But the key takeaway is, trying to deny these parts doesn't make them vanish. It just makes them unconscious, and maybe even more likely to cause trouble later.
But Jung's idea is that real kindness doesn't come from denying all this, does it? It comes from actually acknowledging it, integrating it.
Precisely. The source material makes it clear. Authentic kindness comes not from self-denial, but from embracing all of who we are, the good, the bad, the messy bits we'd rather not look at. I mean, think about it yourself. How often have you felt maybe a flash of irritation or a really strong personal need and immediately thought, oh, a good person wouldn't feel this, and just shoved it down?
Yeah, honestly. Probably more times than I could even count. So what are the consequences then when we consistently reject these negative feelings, when we keep ignoring our shadow?
The transcript lays out some pretty significant fallout. For one, increased vulnerability. If you're not aware of your own boundaries and needs, you're basically setting yourself up to have them crossed.
Okay, that makes sense.
Then there's resentment. It can build up slowly, almost sneakily, when you're always giving and maybe not getting much back or not feeling seen.
Yeah.
Unacknowledged anger can also, fester and maybe come out sideways in unhealthy ways.
Hmm.
And just this deep, nagging sadness can settle in from constantly neglecting your own well-being. It's like living life off balance.
It sounds exhausting, like this constant internal battle. The transcript mentions some paradoxes that happen because of this suppression. Can you give an example?
Yeah, what's really insightful is how these repressed parts don't just disappear. They often find these indirect, sometimes quite damaging ways to get expressed.
Like how?
Well, for instance, someone who always suppresses their anger because they want to be nice, they might become really passive-aggressive instead.
Ah, okay. I see that.
Or maybe someone has a deep, unacknowledged need for appreciation. Instead of asking for it, they might subtly manipulate situations to get that validation they crave.
Mm.
And someone who consciously projects this image of being totally selfless might, without realizing it, end up draining the emotional energy from people around them, kind of compensating for their own inner emptiness.
Wow, that paints a really clear and frankly uncomfortable picture. So the shadow isn't just this, like, dark pit we need to avoid. It actually holds some potential, too.
Absolutely. The source really emphasizes this. The shadow isn't inherently bad or evil.
Hmm.
It also holds untapped strengths.
Yes.
Things like the ability to set healthy boundaries,
Mm.
the capacity to defend yourself when necessary, assertiveness. By rejecting our shadow wholesale, we're not just trying to get rid of the bad stuff. We end up dimming our own light and losing access to these really vital parts of ourselves.
So it's like this lifelong chase to be good, in that narrow societal sense, can actually backfire and create its own trap.
Yeah.
The transcript called it a self-built prison. Can you unpack that a bit?
Yeah, imagine someone who, maybe from childhood, was always told anger is bad, setting boundaries is selfish, your needs come last. Over time, they really internalize these messages.
Okay.
They suppress these natural parts of themselves. And their outward kindness, it stops being genuine and starts being driven by fear.
Fear of what?
Fear of rejection, maybe fear of conflict, fear of just not being seen as good enough by others. And this fear, it becomes the bars of their own self-made prison, really limiting their ability to be authentic, to have truly genuine connections.
That's a really sobering way to put it.
The key insight there is that kindness born out of fear isn't freedom, it's actually a form of self-imprisonment.
Wow. Okay, so what's the path out? How do we start taking down those bars? The transcript mentions something about dancing with the shadow. What does that actually look like in practice?
It's a great metaphor, isn't it? Dancing with a shadow. It captures this idea that our journey towards being whole isn't about somehow eliminating the darkness inside us. It's about learning to integrate it, to, well, move with it.
Okay.
It means recognizing that, say, the capacity for anger is just as valid a part of being human as the capacity for love. Or that setting healthy boundaries is just as crucial for your well-being as being generous is.
So it's about acceptance.
Yes, exactly. When we accept all the different facets of ourselves, the light and the shadow, then we can actually offer genuine love and kindness from a place of authenticity, from inner harmony, not from obligation or fear.
That makes a lot of sense. And this blind kindness, the kind that doesn't integrate the shadow, the transcript points out it comes at a really high cost. What kind of consequences did the source highlight?
Yeah, the transcript paints a pretty stark picture of that cost. Things like deep emotional exhaustion from constantly overextending yourself, postponing or even giving up on your own dreams because your needs always seem to come last, creating these really unbalanced relationships where you're always the giver.
Right, the one-way street dynamic.
Exactly. And ultimately just this pervasive feeling of living a life that isn't quite yours. It talks about the sort of modern-day martyr looking virtuous on the outside, but silently suffering underneath.
And the source material traces this back to our early experiences, right? Those childhood lessons about needing to be good.
Absolutely. The video transcript points out how many of us learned really early on that being good, which often meant pleasing adults, keeping quiet, suppressing our needs, was the way to keep the peace at home.
Or maybe that our worth was tied to how helpful we were.
Precisely. Our value became conditional on helping others.
Yeah.
And these deeply ingrained lessons can just keep driving that pattern of self-sacrifice way into adulthood, often unconsciously.
And this can obviously lead to some really unhealthy patterns in our relationships. The transcript described a specific dynamic that often plays out.
Yes, It often looks like the person practicing this sort of blind kindness becomes the perpetual giver, the constant supporter,
Uh-huh.
always there for everyone else, offering help, listening. But when they themselves need support, need someone to lean on, they often find, well, emptiness or just a lack of real reciprocity.
Why does that happen?
The people in their lives might have just gotten so used to that one-sided dynamic that
Yeah.
they honestly don't even notice the giver's needs, or they don't feel the responsibility to reciprocate. Yeah. And it leads to this deep sense of isolation for the giver and just this slow, grinding erosion of their own desires, their own energy, their own needs.
It's so counterintuitive, isn't it? You try so hard to be kind and helpful, and you end up feeling totally alone. And the transcript even mentioned that this excessive kindness can actually hurt the people we're trying to help. How does that work?
Yeah, this is a really critical point and maybe a hard one to swallow. By constantly stepping in, always rescuing, always shielding others from difficulty,
We think we're helping.
we think we're helping, but we might actually be robbing them of really important chances to grow, to learn from their own mistakes. We prevent them from facing the natural consequences of their actions, consequences which are often necessary for them to build their own resilience and skills.
So, okay, facing our shadow, even though it sounds uncomfortable, maybe even scary, it's actually essential for developing a healthier, more sustainable kind of kindness. The transcript really stressed the courage this takes.
Oh, absolutely. Integrating the shadow is definitely not the easy path. It requires real courage to turn and look at those parts of ourselves we've ignored for so long, the parts that make us uncomfortable. The source material even suggests that sometimes overdoing the kindness thing can actually be a way to avoid things.
Avoid what?
Avoid conflict. Maybe avoid the risk of rejection if we assert ourselves. Avoid being judged if we admit we have needs or desires that aren't purely selfless.
Hmm. And this whole process might mean we have to fundamentally change how we relate to the world, maybe rewrite our contract, as the transcript put it. What does that healthier contract look like?
Well, the old unspoken contract might have been something like, I'll be everything you need me to be, I'll never cause trouble, and in return, please love me, please accept me.
Right.
The new contract, the one the transcript points towards, is grounded first and foremost in self-acceptance. It's about honoring your own needs, your own boundaries, even if, and this is the tough part, even if that means occasionally disappointing other people.
That's a big shift.
It is. It's a shift from constantly looking outside for validation to living in line with your authentic self.
And this sounds like it builds the foundation for what the transcript called wise kindness. How is that different from that easily drained, maybe resentful kindness we talked about earlier?
Wise kindness is strong. It's resilient. It's sustainable. It comes from a deep understanding and acceptance of yourself, including the shadow parts.
Okay.
And that self-acceptance allows you to set firm but still compassionate boundaries. The analogy used is like a deeply rooted tree. It can offer shade, offer shelter, support life around it, but it doesn't get blown over by every gust of wind.
Yeah.
It doesn't deplete its own core resources just to please others. It's a strength that comes from being whole inside.
And the transcript pointed out this fascinating paradox that actually accepting our shadow leads to more genuine kindness, not less. How does that work?
The paradox is really about the motivation. When we embrace all of ourselves, our kindness stops being driven by this anxious need for approval or this fear of not being good enough.
Yeah.
Instead, it starts to flow more freely from a place of inner fullness, genuine empathy. Compassion comes not from obligation or feeling weak, but from the strength of knowing and accepting your whole self.
The transcript also highlighted the role of anger and the power of saying no.
Yes, anger, when we learn to listen to it instead of just suppressing it, can be a really valuable signal. It tells us a boundary might have been crossed or an important need isn't being met.
Like an internal alarm system.
Exactly. And being able to say no, clearly and assertively, it isn't unkind. Often it's a vital act of self-care. It helps maintain healthy relationships built on mutual respect, not on one person constantly giving in. Sometimes saying no is actually the kindest choice, both for you and for the other person in the long run.
It's not all darkness and difficulty lurking in the shadow, though, is it? The transcript mentioned finding some unexpected gifts there, too.
That's right. It's not just about integrating the negative. The shadow also holds positive qualities that we might overlook when we're only focused on being nice.
What kind of positive quality?
Things like healthy self-interest, knowing what you need and valuing it. Strong intuition. The ability to be discerning, to see situations clearly. Even a kind of fierce protectiveness for what you hold sacred.
So wise kindness is really about being more discerning, more conscious in how we give and support, as the transcript suggested.
Precisely. It's about developing the wisdom to know when to give generously and when it's wiser to hold back or conserve energy, when to lean in and connect, and when to create some healthy distance.
Mhm.
And this discernment isn't arbitrary. It's guided by self-awareness, by knowing your own purpose and values, and having genuine respect for everyone involved, including yourself.
This sounds like it leads to a really profound personal transformation.
Yeah.
The transcript used that metaphor, shifting from being a self-sacrificing candle to a self-sustaining lighthouse.
It's a powerful image, isn't it? Integrating the shadow changes how we show up in the world. Your authenticity becomes its own kind of protection. Your truth becomes a tool you can use with clarity, with calm intention. True power, in this Jungian sense, isn't about controlling other people. It's about achieving mastery over yourself, your own inner landscape.
And the wisdom that comes from this integration, it was described as a refined fire.
Yes, a fire that can warm when needed, but also has the capacity to burn, to protect, if necessary. And it's always directed toward protecting what's sacred. And that absolutely includes your own authentic self.
But this isn't like a one-and-done thing, right? The transcript was clear this is an ongoing journey.
Oh, absolutely not. It's a continuous process, a constant awakening, a constant balancing act. The transcript compares it to tending a garden. You need both the sunlight and the shadow for a healthy, thriving ecosystem. We have to keep tending to that interplay between our conscious self and our shadow.
And ultimately, this integrated kindness becomes a conscious choice. It's not driven by those old, unconscious patterns of fear or guilt or obligation anymore.
Exactly. It gives you the freedom to say no without feeling guilty and to say yes without feeling resentful later. Your choices start coming from a place of real inner alignment, genuine freedom.
So it's this continuous journey, as the transcript emphasizes finding that dynamic balance between light and shadow, strength and compassion, giving and receiving.
And maybe one of the most hopeful parts is that by doing this work ourselves, by embracing our own wholeness, we actually create ripples. We make it safer, more possible for others to do the same. We offer a different model of what it means to be human, one that values both our strength and our vulnerability.
So this transformation, it turns kindness from something that can feel restrictive, like tight clothing,
Yeah,
into something that actually liberates us.
precisely. It becomes this authentic expression of our whole selves, where strength and compassion aren't opposites, but flow naturally from the same integrated source.
Wow. This has been a really, really illuminating deep dive. It definitely challenges some core beliefs many of us hold about being a good person. As we start to wrap this up, what's maybe the key question you'd want our listener to sit with after hearing all this?
I'd really encourage you, the listener, to maybe take some quiet time later for some honest self-reflection. Ask yourself, what parts of me have I consistently pushed away because I thought they weren't good? What inner strengths might I have accidentally suppressed along the way? What boundaries have I avoided setting, maybe out of fear of what others might think?
And it feels so crucial to remember, as the source material really gently reminds us.
Your kindness, your fundamental goodness. It doesn't depend on you being perfect or completely selfless. Your worth as a person isn't measured by how much you sacrifice.
Right.
Embracing your own strength doesn't make you less loving. And setting healthy boundaries doesn't make you less deserving of love or connection. Not at all.
Jung's message, as we've explored it today through this transcript, it really feels like an invitation, doesn't it? An ongoing journey toward becoming more whole, more free.
It really is. It's
Yeah.
like an encouragement to start choosing authenticity over just seeking approval all the time, to cultivate conscious empowerment instead of maybe mistaking weakness for virtue, and to embrace this true, integrated kindness over that unconscious, draining self-sacrifice.
Imagine, just for a moment, a world where more people have done this work, embraced their light and their shadow, where they understand that real goodness comes from self-acceptance, where they can be both incredibly strong and deeply compassionate and know when to be open and when to stand firm. That's kind of the inspiring vision that comes out of this, I think.
It is, and maybe with that vision in mind, here's a final thought to consider. What untapped potential for power lies dormant within you? Not power over others, but that deep, quiet power that comes from integrating your own shadow, turning it into fuel for your growth, your creativity, and for building truly authentic connections.
Hmm. Well, if this exploration has resonated with you, if it's sparked some new thoughts about kindness, about your own inner world, we definitely invite you to subscribe and maybe enable notifications so you don't miss our future deep dives.
Yeah, and if you know someone else who's maybe grappling with these ideas or could benefit from this perspective, please do share it with them.
Let's keep exploring this journey of self-discovery and transformation together.
Moving closer, step by step, to becoming our authentic, strong, and truly free selves.